Welcome to this episode of the Chi Life podcast. In this episode, we have Helen Charters as our guest. Now, Helen Charters does all sorts of interesting things, and one of the things that she does is she works as a celebrant. And because of the many different interests and other things that she works with, she brings some different approaches to the different occasions that she acts as a celebrant for. So I think we'll have a really interesting conversation about that. So welcome, Helen.
Thank you, John. This is very exciting for me, my first podcast.
Ah, excellent. Newbie.
Yeah.
So maybe you can tell us, well, maybe let's start with how did you become a celebrant? I think that's a good place to start. What sort of got you into becoming a celebrant in the first place?
Well, it happened just over 20 years ago here in New Zealand. I come from Zimbabwe and I had recently migrated to New Zealand.
Hmm.
And I was at a festival, a Christmas and New Year festival. And I always perform in the concert. Every year they would have this festival and there would be a concert, and I would always do some comedy or sing or whatever. And in the concert, I happened to mention Archangel Michael. And the next morning at breakfast, because there were over 100 people at this retreat, this couple came and sat down with me at the breakfast table and said, "Are you a celebrant?" And I said, "No." "Would you like to be a celebrant?" "I don't know, maybe." "Well, you have to because we need you to perform our wedding ceremony in Wellington in 3 weeks' time." So I said, "Okay, why? Why did you pick me?" And he came from Denmark, and in a very broken English accent, he said, basically, to cut a long story short, I communicate with Archangel Michael, and Archangel Michael told us that we need to go to this retreat where we will meet the celebrant who's going to perform our wedding ceremony. And we've been at this retreat for several days and we just haven't seen anybody who fit the bill. And then last night you mentioned Archangel Michael in your skit, and we knew immediately it was you. So you have to do our wedding ceremony. So I said, "Oh, well, that sounds like fun. Um, how do I become a celebrant?" And then I went through the process of finding out how to do it. I lived in Hawke's Bay at the time. So I went to the court in Napier and I said to the man, "I need to become a celebrant." And he looked at his records and said, "No, I'm sorry. We've got too many celebrants in Hawke's Bay. We don't need any more." And I said, "But I have to because I've got a ceremony to perform in 3 weeks' time in Wellington." And he said, "Oh, well, sorry." And I said, "I have to do it." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because Archangel Michael said so." And he looked at me like this and, "Okay then," and stamped my forms, and I became a celebrant.
He decided he wasn't going to argue
He
with the
wasn't going
Archangel
to,
Michael.
no, he decided, I don't know if he understood what the heck that meant, but it was enough to get me through. And then, of course, I had to figure out what a celebrant did, buy my special outfit, because they had an amazing ceremony in Wellington. It was completely fairy theme. And they used to import these beautiful crystals from overseas as their business. And so this room was just beautifully decorated with massive crystals all over. And she was dressed as a fairy and he was dressed as a fairy. So I had to buy a special dress to wear. I had long hair in those days. And one more thing about that ceremony was he had written a poem to his bride. And he knew I was a musician. And so he asked me to turn it into a song to perform in the ceremony. So I had to take my guitar along and sing her this song during the ceremony. So it was very special. And that was my introduction.
Wow, that's quite a story for how you
Yeah.
started being a celebrant, and
Hmm.
and right from the very first occasion that you're a celebrant for, a little bit of a different one with fairies and crystals and
Yes.
singing a song
Hmm.
and all that sort of thing.
That's right.
So what sort of different occasions would you act as a celebrant for?
Well, as a court-appointed celebrant, it's for marriages.
Okay.
So we'll start with that topic. Um, you can have a marriage celebrant and a civil union celebrant. Marriage
Hmm.
celebrant is for straight couples, civil union celebrant is for gay couples.
Hmm.
So as soon as they introduced the civil union part, I said, yep, I'm in. I wanted to
Yeah.
perform those as well. So I do perform both types of ceremonies, and I've done many in Hawke's Bay where I lived. And then I moved to Taupo and I did some in Taupo. And now I'm living in Auckland. And I've done a few in Auckland, but not as many as I'd like.
Right.
So that's the wedding side of things. And we can talk more about that later on if you like. But I also do funerals. And I
Mhm.
have to tell you this, John.
But there's not sort of, you don't have to be a court appointed
No,
to do the funerals,
no.
but obviously people often want someone to help them with that occasion.
Well, they do.
Yeah.
They do.
And so it's not like a legal requirement, but that's something that you can be part of to help them with that.
Yes, if they put enough thought into it
Mhm.
and they realize what a profound moment in time, the passing over from the physical body into the back into the soul and all that. It's a very profound and very sacred, special time for someone.
Mhm.
If someone realizes that you need to bring someone in to honor that part of it,
Mhm.
then they would get someone like a celebrant, a funeral celebrant, to perform that ceremony. But the difficult part for us is promoting yourself as a funeral celebrant
Mhm.
because people don't want to talk about when I'm going to die, you see?
And it's well, yes, and it's often the sort of thing that they or even the family only talk about right at the last moment, sort of thing. And they, oh, we've got to organize something, rather than something where a wedding that people are often planning months or sometimes
Oh,
even
yes.
years in advance, right?
Yes.
Whereas the funeral, they kind of often just, you know, put something
Yeah.
together in a short
I did
space of
one
time.
funeral once in Napier where a woman had seen me give us talk at one of the churches. I was invited to be this guest speaker, and she said to her family afterwards, "I want that woman to perform my funeral service." But they didn't contact me to tell me that until she had passed.
Right.
And then they contacted me, so I went to meet the family, and I said, "Well, I'm very honored, and I'd love to. What type of service did she want?" And they went, "I don't know. You figure it out." And so I thought, it's really useful if someone knows they want a celebrant and they know who it is, meet with them before you pass over and tell them, I want these songs, I want this kind of a theme. You can have a ceremony that's funny. You can have a ceremony that's deep and meaningful and divine and makes people cry. You can have lots of music, and you can design your funeral exactly how you want it to be.
Mm.
And it's really useful to tell the celebrant all that in advance so we can plan it so the person gets exactly what they wanted.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. And there's no reason why you can't plan that to some extent ahead of time. I remember
Exactly.
once when I was in Australia, a lady who I knew there had terminal cancer. Um, and so they ended up having a big party before she died.
Yes.
And so she did have that opportunity to
Mm.
think about all the things that she wanted as part of a celebration of her life. And yeah, there's no reason why other people can't do that kind of planning ahead of time, and for the funeral, and so that they can give that celebration the character that they
Mm.
would like to have.
I do recommend having a celebration before they pass over. It's nice. I mean, in a funeral, obviously people stand up and say, "What I loved about so and so was this and that," but why not tell them to their face?
Yeah,
That's my
yeah.
thinking anyway. Mm.
So weddings, funerals, are there other
Yes,
sorts of occasions?
baby namings. And I do have a funny story to tell you about baptisms and baby namings. I was in Australia on holiday, and we went to a mind body health expo.
Hmm.
And we walked in absolutely packed with people, right? Thousands of people and all these stalls. And there was a stall with celebrant written on. So I said to my friend, "Oh, there's a celebrant. I'm going to go and introduce myself and say, I'm a celebrant in New Zealand. How
Hmm.
do you do? Nice to meet you." So I did that. And she said, "You must come to the main stage at 2 o'clock. I'm performing baby baptisms. I'm going to get all the babies in the room to come and be baptized by me." So I said, yeah, I'll be there. Now, just bear in mind what I was wearing. I was wearing a mini dress with tights and a sort of leather jacket
Okay.
because I was not in celebrant mode.
Yeah.
I'm on holiday mode, right?
Mhm.
So there I am sitting in the audience, and she's up on stage, and there was a musician playing beautiful music on the keyboard. And she says, "Right now I'm going to start blessing the babies." And she had some oil and some candles. And then she said, which I wasn't expecting, "Any adults who would like also to be baptized can come up too."
Mm.
And I thought, I'm in now, I'm going to do it. Why not? So I whipped off I kept my leather jacket on, and I walked up to the stairs, and I took my candle, and there were all these people with their babies, and I was in queue. And I'm picking up my candle, and I look up, and there's no celebrant on the stage. And I think, well, she can turn herself invisible. I can't do that. How do I get to do that? And then the musician who's playing the keyboard stands up and walks to the back of the stage and looks down. So I went and looked, and the celebrant had fallen off the stage and broke her ankle.
Oh.
So next thing was, is there a doctor in the house? Call the ambulance, all that stuff. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not a doctor or a nurse or anything. I can't help in that way. And I leaned over and said, "Do you want me to bless the babies?" And she goes like this, "Yes, please." So off with my leather jacket, standing there in my mini dress, and I winged it basically because I had no plan, and I blessed all the babies for her.
Okay.
Yeah, that was very funny.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. So the classic hatches, matches, and dispatches.
Yes.
Are there any other kind of
Oh,
events that you
yes.
sometimes act as a celebrant
Well, I
for?
am an ordained peace minister as well.
Okay.
So I love to perform ceremonies for the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And there are lots of different planetary healing ceremonies you can perform on whatever day. For example, there's Earth Day,
Mm-hmm.
and there's Water Day, and there are Goddess Days. And so I like to perform fire ceremonies, water ceremonies, land blessing ceremonies on special occasions.
I suppose as well as special days, that could be a nice thing, like, for example, if someone buys a new house.
Oh,
Because
yes.
for the environment that they're moving into, to have
Mm.
a special ceremony that, like,
Mm.
okay, we're now moving to
Absolutely.
this land, to this environment,
Yes.
that sort of
Mm.
thing.
So house clearings, for example, just clear the energy from the previous whatever went on there before,
Mm-hmm.
so that you would move into a new fresh space. Yes, and there are different tools that you can use for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What other ceremonies? Oh, yes. Where I live, we had to cut down a whole lot of very big gum trees because I don't know if you know, but gum trees, when they get very high and very old, are called widow makers because they just drop their branches and they're very dangerous. And so I thought, you know what? We need to do a tree blessing ceremony for this because these trees have been here longer than any of us. And we can't just chop them down without honoring and thanking them for the protection that they've given us, the life, the shade, the beauty. So I did hold a tree blessing ceremony, and we went to all the different areas where these trees were, and we planted crystals, and we sang to them, and we performed ho'oponopono, which is an ancient Hawaiian tradition of asking for forgiveness and blessing. And that felt really good, and it felt okay. I mean, it was sad when they went down, but at least we felt we had done our part. So
Mm.
those are the kind of ceremonies I like to perform as well. Full
Okay.
moon, equinox, that sort of thing. Yeah.
So quite a range of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Why, or what is the value of us having ceremony, having ritual around these important times in our lives, whether that be births, deaths, marriages,
Mm-hmm.
or whether that be other things like change of season, particular days when we're moving to a new environment? Wh- Why is that important? What does that do for us to, rather than just, just carrying on like nothing's happening?
Mm.
what value is there in us having a ritual or ceremony on those occasions?
First of all, it helps to heal the earth.
Hmm.
Every time a group of people, Jesus said, when two or more are gathered together in my name, basically. So when a group of people gets together with the same intention, and that intention is sacred and positive, and it's there to declare to the universe, to the divine beings, to whatever name you use for the creator, the source, that adds incredible power to the whole purpose of whatever you're doing.
Hmm.
So you set your intention, the group sets their intention. So if it's Earth Day, for example, we would all honor the earth. We would go through rituals to connect with the earth, ground ourselves into the earth, connect the heavens to the earth and back up again through our bodies, through our breath. There's so much you can do. Um, and once you've declared your intention, you call in whatever divine beings you want to. It's good to do that in a wedding ceremony too, and a funeral, because if you don't do that, what you're doing is you're saying, well, I'm as a human being in this body, that's all there is. But if you call in divine beings, you're actually getting a massive amount of help, protection, guidance, love, light from those beings. And in my opinion, and in many people's opinion, whoever you believe in is fine. There's no I'm right, you're wrong. Whoever you believe in, those are the ones that you call in.
Well, and sometimes people with different beliefs, if you dig into it, you may find that they're actually believing in kind of the same thing or person. They're just
Mm,
describing it in different ways or giving it a different name. So,
absolutely.
whatever fits with their belief system, they can work with that in a valuable way.
Well, of all the traditions, the basic message is always the same, love one another, respect the earth, treat each other well, try and be positive, those sorts of things that they all basically say the same thing in different ways.
Mm,
So when you're in a ceremony, you're declaring your intention, you're calling in the divine beings and asking for their help to whatever it is that you're trying to do. And you're making a commitment. So if it's a marriage ceremony, you're making a commitment with the universe, the earth, your friends and family as witnesses. And that adds a huge amount of power to whatever it is that you're intending.
I guess that can give you or help you to be much more clear in your intention and your energy that you bring to whatever it is that you're doing, because you've taken the time to think about it, and then to, in whatever symbolic way, um acknowledge that this is what you're planning to do, which
Mhm.
which hopefully then leads to greater success, like, particularly in terms of marriage or something like that. If you've taken the time to really think about and be clear in your intention,
Mm,
hopefully that means you're going to be able to do that more successfully, more effectively.
absolutely. It adds a lot of power when you declare it out loud, too. And then you can use all sorts of fabulous tools to help you, too, like crystals. If you in the shamanic traditions, for example, they use the 5 elements of
Hmm.
fire, so there's usually candles being lit:
Yeah.
earth, air, water, and ether or spirit. So often in my ceremonies, I will have a sample of all of those at the altar. It's nice what I do is I have a circular altar on the floor, and I will put statues and crystals and candles and the 5 elements, flowers, make it beautiful and make it sacred.
Mm,
And then one important thing to do as well is to clear the space.
mm.
Clear the space with sage or incense or Palo Santo, smudging people as well as they come into the room is also a very nice. People that do like to be smudged, and that clears them and sets them up
Right. So
to
not
start.
everyone listening may know what smudging is. Can you describe for people? What do you mean when you smudge
Certainly.
people, and what does that do?
Well, if I'd known that, I'd have got my smudge stick
Well,
out.
we could have
But
done it right
anyway,
on camera.
yes. So you can buy them in New Age shops. It's about that thick, and it's white sage, all bound together, very, very tight. And then you light it at the end, and it radiates this white smoke.
Mhm.
And then the person who's conducting the smudging waves this up and down as each person comes in, to the side, to the other side, turns the person round and waves it up and down again. And then that person has been cleared, and then the next person moves in.
So
Mm.
they're bathed with the smoke, and I guess also the
Mm.
energy radiating from the flame as well,
And the intention
and the
of
intention.
clearing
Yeah.
that person and allowing them to leave the past and the future behind them and coming into this room to be fully present
Mm.
with the ceremony that we're about to perform.
So in a sense, similar to, not the same clearly, but similar in intention to the way baptism is used sometimes, where it's the idea of like cleansing and then you go through fresh.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a baptism is something that people typically do once in their life,
Mm.
but something as a yeah a more in the short term, just cleansing. So you let go of whatever's bothering you, so that you can be fresh and truly present and focused on what you're doing.
Yes, and anybody can do that at any age.
Hmm.
You know, if a person decides, right, I'm done with that relationship or that job or that home or that country, I'm moving from this way of life to this way of life, you can have a ceremony to take you from the old and into the new.
And clear the residues so you're
Yeah.
fresh and focused
Hmm.
and ready to go.
And ask for help. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to ask for divine help to cut the cords or heal the cords that you have attachments to people or places
Mm,
so that you can open the door for the new to come in.
mm.
Hmm.
So you mentioned you sometimes use things like things representing the five elements,
Hmm.
things like crystals, things like that. How are some of the ways that you would use that within a ceremony? Well, those different things, not just that. Some of those
Okay.
different things.
For example, that lamp behind you is
Hmm.
full of rose quartz
Hmm.
crystals. So I did a full moon ceremony once where that had been lit. There's a light inside it, which means that that lamp represents divine light and divine love because rose quartz is the crystal for love,
Hmm.
right? So I asked everybody to take one of the crystals out and place it against their heart, close their eyes, and breathe into the heart and imagine the highest possible form of love that there is. Using the crystal as a powerful tool to amplify divine love in their heart. So that's one way of using a crystal.
Hmm.
And there's many other ways because the different crystals have different mm, uh,
Qualities.
qualities. And, citrine is for financial abundance, for example, and amethyst is for clearing spaces because it's purple and connecting to the divine. So is a clear quartz crystal. So, yes, different crystals have different purposes. And also, it's really nice to, if you've got some crystals, to go out in nature and bless that crystal with your heart. Just love it, love it. And then plant it at the bottom of a nice big tree
Mm.
and send love into that tree so that the mineral kingdom and the plant kingdom and the human kingdom can connect and become one. Hmm.
Cool. And how about the five elements? What are some ways you might bring the five elements into a ceremony?
Okay. Uh, my favorite elements are earth and water.
Hmm.
So I've talked a little bit about earth, planetary healing, the
Hmm.
importance of grounding, the importance of every day we should ground ourselves by walking barefoot on the earth. And I've recently learned that grounding yourself while you eat is really good too. So I always, when it's a nice day, I'll go out, I'll take my shoes off, and I'll have my lunch outside in the sun with my feet on the ground, on
Mm.
the earth. So that's the earth. But water covers around 80% of the earth's surface. And water is constitutes about 80% in our body. So water is really, really important. And yet look what we've done to the waters of the world over the years. It's shocking. So blessing the waters, and there's so many different ways to bless water. You can use crystals, you can use water purifiers, you can stick pictures of and words onto your water container, you can put a crystal in your water container. You can hold your water bottle against your heart and just fill it with love before you drink it. You can go to the ocean or a stream or a river or a lake and get in the water if you can and just do ho'oponopono, which basically is, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I thank you, I love you. And there's a ho'oponopono song that you can sing that I do sometimes in my ceremonies. So that's how I bless water. And I do bless water every day. My own drinking water goes through the most incredible process before it gets into my mouth, because I know how important water is, and we need to bless water all the time. Mm.
Mm. So it sounds like there's lots of different things or parts that you can potentially put into a ceremony or a ritual as part of a
Mm.
celebration.
Yes.
Um, Maybe could you tell us some stories about some of the maybe the more interesting events that you've been a celebrant for, and maybe the impact that that's had. Uh, yeah.
Well, um, the beauty about planning weddings is, I say to the couple, it's really important for this ceremony to reflect who you are, what your values are, and what your intention is for getting married, so that you can declare that to the universe, to your friends and family, to one another, and amplify that intention.
Hmm.
So I've done weddings where the couple arrives on a motorbike in a redwood forest. I've done weddings where the dogs carry the rings,
Okay.
okay, because
Yeah.
they love their dogs. I've done weddings on the beach, and that's no fun. When the waves are crashing and you're having to shout so that all the people can hear what you're saying because there's no amplification on the beach.
Yeah.
Um, Otherwise, yes, and of course you can have your ceremony in your own backyard. It doesn't have to be expensive either, you know. You can get people, everybody to bring food. You can really narrow down the costs. I'm one of those people who believes, you know, spend your money on your home and your future, not on your wedding ceremony, because that's over in a few hours. And then what have you
Mm.
got? I've got a friend getting married on the South Island soon, and she's having a whole weekend. So people are coming from all over and spending the whole weekend with them,
Hmm.
which I think is a great idea, you
Hmm.
know, camping and the party just, you know, the ceremony and then the party lasts for a while. One thing I do recommend to couples is that they video their ceremony. And often they'll say, oh, no, we've got a photographer. And I say to them, you know what? You might have children one day.
Mm.
And those children are going to say, you know, what was your wedding like? You want to show them. Also, there's some people who are not going to be able to make it to your wedding. Why not have it filmed and send them? And then, especially if you mention it in your ceremony, we'd like to acknowledge and know that all those people who can't be with us here today, living and who have passed over, are here with us in spirit. And you can even name some of them. You know, my grandmother in England couldn't make it, name them. Then when they see that filmed ceremony, it really does make that connection.
Mm.
So I do give a fair amount of advice based on 20 years of experience as to what works well and what doesn't work well.
Hmm.
I do love ceremonies where they include, you know, the children maybe, or someone reading a poem or singing a song or doing a dance. You know, it's good to weave into the ceremony whatever you value and
Mm.
find important in your life.
So, what are some of the more interesting things that you've helped people to weave into some ceremonies that you've you've conducted? Is there anything that really stands out as some of the more unusual or interesting things?
Well, I suppose the ones that are uncontrollable, the ones that when you've got little children involved, you don't really know what's going to happen.
Mm.
So we try and have rehearsals with the children the day before to say, okay, you're going to walk and do this. But you don't know on the day, whether they'll drop the rings or lose the rings. And all same with animals. You don't know whether the dogs will, with the rings, will take off into the forest and you never see them again. Um, Otherwise, I mean, there's been times when even I've been surprised. I've done ceremonies where couples have arrived, like we're all standing in the hot sun on the beach, and they've arrived like over an hour late,
Aye.
and that's really not good.
Mm.
One bride was dressed all in black. That
Unusual choice.
surprised me, especially since she had created a whole photograph album of her wedding in advance. This is what the music's going to be. This is what the car is like. These are the bridesmaids' dresses. Everything, except she didn't put a picture of her black wedding dress in it.
So that was her surprise.
Well, I
So
guess,
it
yeah.
sounds like she must have
Yeah.
planned that as
Yeah.
well, well in advance.
Yeah. So
Ah.
there's, some couples don't have a clue in advance. And so that's where I spend a lot of time with them saying, well, who else would you like to include in the ceremony? What music do you want? Oh, what do you mean music? And I say, well, we normally have music 3 times during the ceremony. At the beginning, when the bride arrives. In the middle, when there's the signing of the declaration of marriage, because, people are standing around and 5 people have to sign it.
Mm.
And at the end, when it's all over, it's nice to have some music just to complete it nicely. So then they got to think of their favorite songs and things. They might have live music, they might have recorded music. Oh, and it is important to have a responsible person playing the recorded music. I have done one wedding where the person played the wrong songs every time, and I didn't mind, but the couple were, yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Can you think of one of the funniest things that's happened at a celebration that you've been part of?
Um, okay. I
I'm
was
sure there's a
hope
few.
I was hoping you wouldn't ask this because I wasn't happy at
You-
all. So it happened in the rural areas of Hawke's Bay. She was pregnant, so that's one of the reasons they were getting married. They basically said, you just do the ceremony. We'll just say whatever you tell us to say." They did not want much involvement. It took me a long time to find the place. Eventually, so by the time I got there, I was not in a good space. I had to breathe myself into, come on, okay, you're here now, you found it, the people are here, it's all good, everything's fine. And I performed the ceremony, and that went okay. And then I said, you may now kiss your bride. And he kissed his bride. And then the groom turned around and said, "Great, now we can get pissed."
Oh, goodness.
And that really shocked me
Yeah.
because clearly that's what he had in mind for the whole thing. And that was probably the worst experience I've had.
Yeah, it sounds like they were looking at it very much as just a formality that they had to get out of the
Well, not
way.
so much both of them. I think mainly him.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was into it, she had a nice dress and all
Yeah.
that and made the effort, but that was a shock for me.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Not like some of the other ceremonies that you conduct, I'm sure.
No, 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 no. The others have been beautiful. And I like the ones where people understand how sacred that moment is, and they go to the trouble to decorate the place and bring in their own sacred rituals with
Mhm.
crystals or smudging or music or whatever. I've done a
Mm.
few of those too, and That's really beautiful. Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, and also I've done, now that with technology, I've performed ceremonies where they film it live so that the overseas relatives can be part of the ceremony in different countries.
Yeah.
So that's amazing too.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of technology.
Yeah. And I guess in this day and age, as people, people are viewing religion differently in this day and age often, and maybe not feeling as connected to, probably in the past, a lot of people just like, right, that's how you do it because that's the way people in their church or religion do it, and so you just do it that way. But with
Mm.
people not feeling quite so connected to those
Mm-hmm.
traditions anymore, um, they still want to have meaning as part of their ceremony, but not they don't necessarily want to carry on that. And so
Mm.
I guess it's a good opportunity with some guidance for them to find other things that are meaningful to them
Mm.
to have as part of that ceremony and ritual
Mm.
as they go through important turning points in their lives.
I'll often get that when people call me and they'll say, we're looking for a celebrant for our wedding. We're not religious.
Mm,
Often they'll say that as their first thing.
mm,
And I'll say, well, that's fine too. And then, so we have a chat on the phone. And if they like the sound of me,
mm-hmm,
then we will arrange to meet. And we'll have a coffee somewhere in a cafe and we'll talk about what their values are. And then I give them a template of a typical ceremony,
mm-hmm,
how a ceremony usually starts, how it goes through the sequence, how it usually ends, where the vows go, where the rings go, where the signing goes. Do you want to add in, do you want to mention people who have passed over who can't be with you? Do you want children or anyone to sing a song or read a poem? So I give them the template and they find that really useful because then they can work with that and change it as they want to.
mm-hmm.
And then they email that back to me and then I'll read through it and I'll contact them and say, well, yes, that would work, but it would be better if this part was over here because of this and that. And we eventually polish it up and then I type it out and put it into my special book here.
Uh-huh.
And this is what I use when I'm in a ceremonies.
Okay.
I read from that. And yeah, that's how it works.
Oh, cool. Have you ever had, because quite a few people come to New Zealand
Mm-hmm.
to get married, for example.
Yes,
Like
yes,
they actually choose New Zealand as a
yes,
destination because they want to get, married amongst the beautiful scenery here rather than in
yes.
their own country. Have you ever had someone from overseas
Oh,
contact
yes.
you and
Oh, yes.
so you haven't actually met them before, but they want you to conduct?
That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we do that over email, by email. I've had a few of those
Mm-hmm.
where they've said, I've always wanted to get married in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
One couple had never been to New Zealand, but they decided that's where they wanted to get married. They left their children back home in their other country. They just came here for a week or two for a holiday and to get married and then go back. So
Mm.
yes, I've done a few weddings like that
Mm.
where they are not locals. Mm.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Well, I expect probably the vast majority of people listening to this podcast are going to be from overseas. Oh
Oh,
yeah, there'll be some people in New Zealand, of course,
yes, okay.
but a lot more people from overseas in different parts of the world. So
Mm.
maybe if any of them are thinking about getting married and thinking about, well, how can I put together a ceremony that
Mm-hmm.
might sound a little bit, might fit more with what they want,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they could get in touch with you.
Of course.
How can people get in touch with you?
I do have a Helen Charters celebrant Facebook page.
Okay, cool.
And my email address is helen.charters01
Yeah.
at gmail.com.
Okay, cool. We'll put those details into the written description
Okay.
of the episode. So again, if someone's listening, you never know, they might have been thinking about getting married in New Zealand.
That sounds great.
Cool. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about being a celebrant or about your take on that?
Um, I'm very keen on the power of sound.
Okay.
sound vibrations. There's so much out there that you can learn about the importance of sound. So you can use, brass bowls, crystal bowls. You can do chanting, sacred sounds, or singing. In churches, they sing hymns. In other religious traditions, they do kirtan or things like that. So I lead kirtan, and I'm a great believer in using the power of song. It's wonderful to have everyone in a funeral singing something together,
Mm.
and at a wedding. S- Singing is a very healing process for anybody. I don't know if you know that, but everybody should sing, in my opinion, at least once a day,
Mm.
and allow that vibration to resonate through their body and breathe. It helps you breathe better, it helps you sleep better. It's good for healing. So I like to include sound in my ceremonies always. Yeah. What else can I tell you? Just honoring our commitment and our reliance on the earth, Mother Earth. We are a part of her. Without her, we wouldn't be here. And when we have ceremonies, it's really important to honor the earth and to connect people to the earth, our mother, when we're in ceremony, because that's healing for her. And she does need healing at the moment, as you know. There's so much that's not good with the way that humanity is treating the earth. So whatever we can do to bring healing, go out into nature, walk in a park, take your shoes off, touch the trees and communicate with them. Trees are amazing beings. They have an amazing communication system under the earth and above the earth. They're very healing for the planet. They need to be treated with love, honor, and respect. So we need to connect more with nature. Breathe in. When you're breathing, acknowledge that you're breathing in fresh air that Mother Earth has provided for us.
Mm. It's one of the things I've thought about from time to time because, as in many ways, the world is more connected. We're connected by technology and, that sort of thing. Again, there's
Mm-hmm.
going to be people all over the world listening to this
Mm-hmm.
podcast, listening to us talking together. And that wasn't so easy previously. But then in other ways, we're also becoming more fragmented in our interaction with each other. And there's this dichotomy. We're more connected, but we're also more disconnected in some
Mm-hmm.
ways.
Mm-hmm.
And in the past, it was often there were things like religion, an office. Often that was geographically defined because people had different religions in different parts of the world. But religion that brought together people with a shared purpose and a common belief and a common focus,
Mm-hmm.
and as that isn't playing such a strong role anymore, I think we lose something by not coming together with that common focus and common purpose. And so, what is it that can unite us in a similar way as religion has previously and still does for some people? It's not like
Mm.
religion has completely gone away, but
Mm.
it's not playing the same role. And of course, there are principles that are hopefully universal, things like love and kindness and gratitude and this sort of thing that
Mm-hmm.
hopefully we can agree on and we can get together on.
Mm-hmm.
But then what's the other thing that really unites us? And that's our natural environment. That's the earth. That's the
Mm-hmm.
nature around us. We're all connected to this. We're all reliant and dependent on this.
Mm.
I think that's a valuable thing for us to acknowledge, as you've said, and a valuable thing for us to come together around.
Mm.
And so it sounds like for people who would like that to be part of their celebration, part of their ceremony, their ritual, you're well positioned to help them to bring that into the celebrations and events and occasions that they have.
Yes, and there's such power in numbers. That's why festivals, in my view, are so valuable. Is when you have festivals and even um, huge sporting events. I never thought about this before.
Mm.
And I would think, oh, I'm not going to that stadium with a whole bunch of rugby followers, it'll just be rah rah. But the fact is that all of those people, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands, are all in the same space with the same intention.
Mm.
Now, if somebody who's conscious of that goes in there and starts to harness that vibration, right?
Mm.
Can you imagine all these people going, ah? And if it's good, someone scores a goal and everyone's going, yay! Harness that. That's what I do now when I go to a sporting event. I'm not necessarily there to watch the game, but I'm there to energetically harness that energy and send it around the world, send it around, sending peace, sending love, because those events are powerful, energetic activities. And they've proven, for example, when major world events happen, like 9/11, and when Princess Diana died. Now imagine recently when the Queen died, the Earth's magnetic field shifts, it changes. They can see it on a graph because the consciousness of so many millions of people is all focused on this event. Now imagine if we could do that on a positive way, like if something wonderful happened, the Earth would feel it in a positive way. Let's do more of that. Let's connect with that energy grid. There's an energy grid within the Earth, which we can communicate with through our bodies, with our intention, with a loving heart. Blessing the Earth receives it, and then she gives it back to you. So it's a mutual healing process between the person and the Earth. And then if you've got a group of people, it's exponentially profound.
Yeah, and I suppose in a smaller way, maybe than a big sporting event, but that's what we can do within our ceremonies, within our occasions, with those people gathered together. We can have that group energy to support whatever it is that that we're marking.
And indigenous peoples do it naturally. You see these YouTube clips, and you'll see Native Americans all dressed in their beautiful, stamping, hey, 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 stamping on the earth around a fire. They do it naturally. And it happens all around the world. They know about the importance of connecting with the earth, and they bring it into their rituals and their ceremonies and their celebrations, their funerals, their weddings. They use that too. So why not us? Why don't we do that? If you have a wedding ceremony, get everyone to take their shoes off and stand in a circle and stamp on the earth, feel it, sing something, hold hands maybe.
Make it a lot more fun than some wedding ceremonies, that's for sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very good. Well, look, thanks for coming on the podcast, Helen. I hope our conversation has been interesting for the people listening and maybe given them some things to think about, particularly if they're organizing, whatever event they might be commemorating or celebrating, some things they can think about, being mindful and conscious about what do they want to put into these events. What symbolism, what meaning do they want to have, what shared focus and intention do they want to have as part of it. And again, maybe if they happen to be in New Zealand already, or maybe they're coming to New Zealand for something, they might be interested in maybe having you help them with that process.
And if you haven't had a ceremony before, have one. Next time you have a birthday party, instead of going to the pub and getting drunk, why not have some friends around and have a ceremony around it, honoring the fact that you were born, honoring the role of the mother and the father, honoring the earth. You can still have a party, but bring some ceremony and some ritual into it. It'll make it so much more memorable for everyone in the room. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's a good point. We can probably bring that into there's the big occasions, but there's lots of small occasions we could bring this
Yes,
into as well.
definitely.
Cool. Thanks, Helen.
Thank you so much.